Good morning. A global race is underway to secure long-term copper supplies and to source them from friendly places. Copper is a crucial element in basically anything that moves electricity around. So anything involving electronics or batteries, electric vehicles, you need a lot of copper. The Biden administration is trying to find sources for copper. And here's an example. They're meeting with investors trying to save a mine in Zambia, Africa. They've reached out to companies in the UAE, Japan, Saudi, see if they want to buy a piece. And the reason is that they want to make sure that China does not get control of it and prevent the Asian superpower from tightening its grip over copper. For the United States, it's a years-long effort to build up supplies of the metals and minerals. Demand for copper is expected to rise. Copper futures are up 20% this year so far. We have a big idea for the Congo, where Saudi will front some of the money and the mines there will guarantee the United States gets some of the copper. Sounds sketchy, but okay. Amos Hochstein is a senior Biden administration official, and his small team flies back and forth between Africa and Wall Street, looks like. Governments in Africa and investors in the U.S. Hochstein here says it takes a long time for a mine to start producing anything. So he's asking Wall Street investors to invest a lot of money in Africa and wait at least a decade before they get any of their money back. Seems optimistic to us, but maybe he knows people on Wall Street who will go for it. So we are anxious to find new sources of copper throughout the world. So Washington set up a corporation, the International Development Finance Corp, to help with money for these projects abroad. Last year, they invested $740 million in the mining sector, $740 million. Since we're worried about China, let's see how much China is spending. $19 billion last year, more than 2.5 times what China did in 2022. So Chinese companies are spending 25 times as much as what the United States has budgeted. That's a good measure of commitment if we're looking for one. $740 million from the US, $19 billion from the Chinese. Let's see then what we can be doing to make sure that China doesn't get the rest of the copper in the world that they don't already have. This is a chart of the world's proven reserves of copper. And when we look at this chart, first consider that China is by far the biggest customer and user of copper. And they have most of the world's smelters of copper. So right now, these countries' best customers are in China. Starting at the top and going clockwise, Chile is at 21%. And Chile is much more friendly with China than the US. In fact, lately, we are going out of our way to offend the Chileans. Australia is a friendly country, but their biggest customer for copper is China. So they'll be playing both sides of the fence because China is where the money is. Peru, we can forget about doing anything there. South America is basically gone for Americans now. China has invested the money, they've done the work, and now they're reaping the benefits of South America. Russia, gone, no need to explain. Mexico, let's call a toss-up. DRC is the Congo. Poland is friendly to the United States. Then China. Indonesia and China are very friendly, especially for nickel and copper, so they're a no. Kazakhstan is right next door to China. They're a no. So the United States, looking at this board, we can count on 2 countries to get us the copper we need if we want to reshore the industry. The United States at 5% and Canada at 1%. But even the US number, 5%, is misleading. We do have a lot of copper, but the Biden administration makes it impossible to get to most of it. Last year, Biden officials shut off a huge part of Minnesota, where a copper mine was going to open. Biden shut it down for 20 years, in fact. Can't turn a shovel in northeast Minnesota until 2043 if you're looking for copper. Antofagasta is a company that wanted to open the Minnesota mine, and Antofagasta is a Chilean company. The mine would have been one of the biggest sources of copper and nickel, which we need to make car batteries. Chile invested hundreds of millions of dollars to develop this mine in Minnesota, and Biden just canceled the whole deal. Chile has the biggest reserves of copper in the world, and we've just told them that you can't do business with the Americans. Here is Alaska. The Pebble Mine was a giant project, one of the world's largest deposits of copper and gold. Biden canceled that one too. In Arizona, there's another one, 40 billion pounds of copper. It was already approved, but Biden officials now are slow walking the approvals for the final environmental plans. They're saying that it's a religious freedoms problem because of some local Indian tribes who want to stop the project. China Copper is one of the biggest companies in the world, and they're stepping up investments overseas. Here's the chairman of the company, who says that China Copper is interested in even risky projects with low exploration rates. This is another strategy that China uses, and they're very successful. Today's risky project might not be risky tomorrow. Reserves that are unrecoverable today may be recoverable in 10 years. So they make the investments now, and in a decade are hauling them out of the ground. And the rest of the world knows it. They know that China is serious and we're not. What did this Chile company find out the hard way? That when Donald Trump says you can come and build a mine and spend hundreds of millions of dollars, the next guy will come and say you can't do it, and all that money is gone. And they tell the company it's off limits for 20 years. So don't hope that Trump can win in November and you can be back in business in January. You're not. The message is don't invest in the United States. That's the message. The supply chains are gone. Except for the Canadians, the United States has no friendships with anyone on this chart here that can be counted on to help us with our copper problem. No friendships, no relationships at all to speak of. Biden's man, Hochstein, Amos Hochstein, is flying back and forth between Africa and New York, and he thinks he's accomplishing something, but he's not. Everyone he meets with knows the United States is just talking. In the US, we don't even allow our own copper companies to produce, to make money, even after they spent hundreds of millions of dollars. Why should they trust us when we say how important their copper is to us, when we don't even want to dig up our own? Flies back and forth between African countries and investors. When Chinese executives go out, they don't come back. They don't fly back and forth. They go to Africa on a one-way ticket and they take $10 billion with them. They go to South America, one-way ticket, and they take $10 billion with them. Here's the money. You need engineers. We'll bring in our engineers and we'll start training yours too. You need roads, we'll build those. You need a bigger port, we'll build that too. That's how the Chinese took over supply chains. One key resource at a time, one country at a time, one investment at a time, one friendship at a time. And now China has them all, and we don't have any. Xinjiang, Northwest China. Be good.
Holy Spirit, give them gifts of wisdom or of prophecy. Teach them to love and make them a warrior in your name. Make them a great evangelist.